College football is right around the corner, and as we get ready for the start of the season, we take a look at some of the SEC teams that could maybe surprise us, maybe be a little bit better than we think. We take a look at 3 teams today that we think can hit on their over-under prediction. That and more on today's episode of the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Hello, everyone. Bryce Koon alongside Ralph Leary and Will Manis. We get ramped up for this college football season, and we take a look at the SEC, one of the first conferences we're going to look at with some of the surprise teams. We did this last year. Ralph, I believe that you chose Ole Miss. Not a terrible idea. I chose, I believe, Texas A&M, and much like everyone across the country, we were all wrong on that. So It is what it is.
All right,
but I
Desmond
think
Howard.
I think, well, I didn't put them in the playoff. Let's just get that straight. We are going to be live next Wednesday night talking about our playoff predictions. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You like the video. If you're listening on audio or radio, we appreciate you as well. Make sure to follow wherever that might be. I also put in South Carolina as a surprise sleeper team. I did hit on that one. They did impress towards the end of the last season. But today we're going to take a look at 3 teams. Each guy is going to bring up a team. We also have a community pick of who we're going to say hits on that over-under. This is all according to the Caesars Sportsbook. So without further ado, let's get into it here. And we got this one right here, Will, as you take the Auburn Tigers. No big surprise here. Obviously we know where your allegiance lies, but Auburn at 6.5, walk us through where you think they can hit 7 wins on the schedule, at least.
Yeah, I'm a disgusting homer. I will own that. You won't be fooling me. You won't be offending me if you say that I am. So, if you look at the schedule, UMass should be cakewalk. First game under Hugh Freeze. It looks like it's going to be a sellout crowd, even though it's going to be an extremely hot day. Y'all are braver than I am because I'll be watching that from home. And then Auburn goes on the road to Cal. I'm not really concerned about Cal. They're going to be the bottom half of the Pac-12 again, if not in that bottom group. Samford, fun game, team right down the road. Auburn should handle that. Texas A&M, big swing game in the season for Auburn, I think. Kind of going to have to see how A&M looks the first 3 weeks before I really make a pick. But Auburn's always done well in College Station since Texas A&M joined the conference. Think back 2013, Auburn went there and won under a first-year head coach. Maybe 2023 they can do it again. Georgia at home, back-to-back national champs. Probably going to beat Auburn. LSU, I don't like to talk about Auburn going to Death Valley. They've been horrible in my lifetime down there. Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Auburn's always done well against those two. Ole Miss is another swing game in the second half of the season. Depending on Auburn's result there, will kind of determine how the rest of the year goes. Vanderbilt should be straightforward, but Vandy will be better this year, I think. Arkansas, Auburn's always done well at Arkansas, so not worried there. New Mexico State, straightforward. Then the big one, Alabama. Auburn having Georgia and Alabama at home, I feel really good about Auburn taking one of those two. So I really see 7 or 8 wins on the schedule there.
And that's 7 or 8 potential wins. Obviously, Will's going to do kind of a breakdown over on the website of thecrowdedbooth.com. We looked at the schedule. You kind of walked us through it, but tell us, on the field stuff wise. I know there's a lot of conversation surrounding that quarterback position, but obviously elsewhere, offensive line, different types of thing. I mean, what has to happen for them to hit the over on that?
Improved offensive line play is number one. If you've read my fall camp notes about Auburn to start at the beginning of fall camp, Auburn brought in a ton of guys to come in and play offensive line. It sounds like there's going to be at least 3, maybe 4 newcomers starting on that offensive line, transfers, or maybe even a true freshman we see in there, Connor Liu. The big name to watch on that offensive line is going to be junior Dylan Wade, transferred from Tulsa, followed Philip Montgomery. From there, he really looks NFL ready, and that would be best case scenario for Auburn. It would hurt. He would only play 1 year for Auburn, but if he's NFL ready, he can really lead that offensive line. Number 2, Auburn's got what I think and a lot of people think an elite secondary, a top-tier secondary in the SEC. A lot of returning talent. You got DJ James coming back. He's going to be a locked-in at corner. Keontae Scott comes back a second year in the SEC, would be big for him. So just a lot of experience, a lot of snaps in that secondary, I think bodes well for Auburn. And then, of course, can't talk about it without bringing up improved quarterback play, whether it's Peyton Thorne, Robbie Ashford, or even Holden Garner. He has really turned the heads of the Auburn coaching staff. They have not been able to knock it down to 2 into that quarterback competition. So the sophomore is really turning heads. But regardless of who it is, I think because that offensive line is going to be a lot better, no matter who the quarterback is, the play will improve at that position.
So Will's got Auburn hitting the over on those 7 wins. Will, I'm not going to let you spoil it because I know you're coming out with kind of a full schedule preview before. But I'll tell you this, as we move on to the next team, Auburn to me is one of those wild card teams in the SEC this year. No one really knows how they're going to respond to Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze is a great football coach, like a good football coach. Like he knows how to move the ball offensively and be creative. It's just, hey, are you going to be able to hit? I would say, Will, in the 70 to 75% range on these transfers. If you can hit around on 75 guys you brought in, to me, that starts to feel like, okay, now we can creep up towards that 7-win mark.
I mean, if you've got 3 newcomers on the offensive line and they all come from the transfer portal, that means one of 2 things. Either the guys you had there were really bad, not at an SEC level, which I would say they weren't, or those guys are really good. And I think at least Dylan Wade is going to be good. You've also got Gunnar Britton, a guy that Auburn fans got to see last year because he comes from Western Kentucky. Really stood out on their offensive line in that game last year.
All right. Auburn 6.5. I like it right there. Let's move on to the next one here, and it's one that I think Ralph holds deeply here. We're going with the Ole Miss Rebels at 7.5 wins. Ralph, you got them going over this.
Yes.
I've got them stumbling in week 1 against my Mercer Bears, but we'll go and continue with that. But hey, seriously, Ralph, this is a tough schedule to navigate. And no, I'm not talking about week 3. Week 2 is where it could be a tricky one down in New Orleans. But seriously, in all seriousness, Ralph, walk me through this schedule. Where do you think they can get 8 wins, and what makes them get there?
Well, here's my thing. Last year they were probably set higher than when they went. They went 8-5 last year. They were still in 2 of those games where they probably could have won 10 games last year. You go back to the Alabama game, lost by 6. It wasn't like it wasn't a blowout. Then Mississippi State lost by 2. And that was one of those games where either way could have gone for anybody. But you're returning with Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins, so it's I'm predicting a higher schedule. But Mercer, no knock to your Mercer Bears, Bryce. They're a good team. They're talented. They're going to do very well this year in their division and their conference. Ole Miss's offense is too much. It truly is.
Yeah.
Tulane, I think it's going to be an exciting game to watch. I really do. I like this matchup. I think it's 2 very explosive offenses. I'm leaning toward Ole Miss's game. I think they're just a little more high-powered in offense than Tulane has. I don't know how Tulane's defense is going to be this year. They had some questionable games last year defensively, but offensively they played really well. Georgia Tech, I'm not going to say much about them. I'll probably hear it from all your Tech fan buddies in Discord later. They will hate me for it. Ole Miss dismantled your defense last year at home.
I didn't coach defense, but I understand.
I'm saying this is for the Tech fans to hear. They dismantled your defense last year on the road. Now they're at home.
Yeah.
They have probably a more steadied offense than they did last year with 2 running backs that were so good. Then they have 1 running back that's extremely good. They're going to be good again. They're probably going to destroy them, honestly.
Note on this, they also just brought in former Georgia Tech running back Jamias Griffin out of Rome, Georgia. So he's going to be really, really good too. They also have like 5 Georgia Tech former players on their roster. But anyways, moving on to a stretch route between Alabama and LSU, that's going to be tough.
And Arkansas. You can't knock Arkansas on this list. Arkansas beat them last year, blew them out actually. It was 42-27 last year. That's a tough one. That one's probably circled right there for Lane Kiffin. Like this was like Alabama's always going to be circled for him. That's Saban for him. He wants to beat him. That's one. But Arkansas last year probably a salty taste in their mouth. Same with LSU. LSU blew them out last year. But if I'm correct, you get them. You're playing Georgia Tech at home, Alabama on the road, LSU, Arkansas at home.
Yes.
So playing at home instead of going to Death Valley makes it a little easier. I'm not saying LSU's playing bad on the road. I think it beat them. I think it was Joe Burrow's year. That was when they had John Rice Plumlee. They played at Ole Miss, and Plumlee was the only quarterback that ran for like 200 yards on Ole Miss, or on LSU the whole entire year.
The
I
only
just
reason LSU won that game is because they just kept scoring.
Right. I don't think that's gonna be the same way. I think LSU probably beats in that game. I truly do. LSU's defense is unreal. I think it's really good this year, and I think they have enough to stop Ole Miss's offense. Arkansas, I'm gonna go Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is, like I said, this the circle on their list this year. We're not gonna overlook this team. They blew us out last year on the road. We're gonna go in, handle business, walk out. The Auburn game, we both know
This is the game Lane Kiffin has circled on his
he
schedule,
hates
without a
playing
doubt.
Auburn. He hates
And Hugh
Auburn.
Freeze. And Hugh
Yeah,
Freeze.
and Hugh Freeze.
And
now.
Hugh
This
Freeze.
is Hugh Freeze's first time against Ole Miss since he's been gone. It's
not. He played him last year at Liberty, or the year before.
It might be
He played him at Liberty, didn't he?
Did he?
I think he did. Yeah, I think he did. Or 2 years ago.
Last year, yes. 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Sorry.
2 years ago.
So this is his first time as an SEC coach returning. I'm not going to say anything about this game. I'm going to put a toss up. I don't know. I don't know much about Auburn right now. They're just a wild card, like Bryce said. Vanderbilt, I think they've walked through Vanderbilt pretty easily. I know we all have them going higher, but they're at home. You feel comfortable playing Vanderbilt at home. A&M, look, they beat them last year by 3. Jackson Dart had a horrible game. You have the backup quarterback in Spencer Sanders. Unless he starts, that has yet to be announced. I think Dart's the starter because he played very well last year, in my opinion. So depending on who's the quarterback by midseason, early in the year, it could be change of play. I think Spencer Sanders is a better thrower, but I think Jackson Dart fits his offense better. Georgia, that's a loss. Knock it up. I mean, like Will said, back-to-back national championships. They're good. They're very good. Okay, see, simple as that. ULM, Sunbelt, Funbelt, baby. Sorry, not going to happen. The Egg Bowl, I think Ole Miss wins it this year. They were pissed off last year. They lost that game. I seriously.
Ralph, how you gonna hate on Tater Tot?
I love it.
The Auburn fans know who Tater Tot is.
Yes,
I don't even know who Tater Tot is.
That's Terry Bowden.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, the head coach at ULM. I apologize.
Who's the OC down there, Will? Do you know?
I don't know.
It was Rich Rod.
Oh,
he's at Jacksonville State,
He's
leading them their
Jacksonville
first
State.
FBS.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember if he was there this year. No, he was last year. Or was it his first year back in Jacksonville State? Or was it his second year at Jackson State?
Second year. He was there last year. Yeah.
Okay, so I think Ole Miss I think they're good. They're very talented. I feel like I said, 2 years or last year, they were in 2 games. They could have won. I know Alabama fans are going to say, "Oh, they were never in our game. They would never won." Look, dude, you beat them by 6. It's Ole Miss. They've beaten you on the road and at home before, back-to-back years. Anything can happen. I'm not sure how Alabama is going to be this year. They don't have the select quarterback yet. We're all used to seeing. So
yeah. And I'll say this too, with what you were saying about if you at least get Alabama in the first 4 weeks of the season. Like if you get Alabama on the back half, that scares me a little bit more because they're going to have an idea whether it's, we're going to be really good. We have a really good option at quarterback, or if it's one of those things where we just know we're going to ground and pound. By week 4, do they really know that? I don't know. But I know you're excited about Quinshon Junkins. I mean, that guy is. I think he's probably the best back in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I said last year that he was going to be the best back in the country eventually, and he was going to win a Heisman one day. I still think that. I mean, he's super talented. He fits well in the offense. He can run, he can catch. I think he threw a touchdown last year, if I'm not mistaken. He was. I mean, and I know it was my Troy Trojans last year who had to see him first, where they had Zach Evans, the starting running back, the big talented 5-star that broke Georgia fans' heart when he decommitted or didn't go to Georgia. Went to TCU, had a okay season, went to Ole Miss and blew up this past year. Now I think he left for the NFL, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah, so Quinshon Junkins is his running back room. He's a sophomore. I mean, it's the ceiling's high for him. I really think so.
Yeah, if Ole Miss was, and I'll say this before we move on to the next team, if Ole Miss was a better team, like if they were in the 10 to 11 win kind of tier, he would get more Heisman votes. Obviously, we know Heisman has a lot to do with how good your team is. But I don't mind that.
It's a quarterback vote. Let's be honest here. I mean, obviously,
you got to be really good. You got to be really good to not be a quarterback.
Devontae Smith winning it was awesome. It was 2020. It was just kind of one of those weird years. He had a great season. Don't get me wrong, but it's a quarterback award. You don't see. I mean, Derrick Henry had the 2,000 yards. I feel like you had to go over 2,000 yards to win that award and actually play real good competition.
And I believe Judkins was around the 1,500-yard mark and like 16 touchdowns last year, something around that mark.
at 15.
Yeah, I would say he's pushing 2,000 this year if he doesn't go over it.
Yeah, I mean, here's one thing: Zach Evans only had 1,000, and he only
That's
had
stupid.
Yeah, so if you give some more of those carries to Quinshon Judkins, he's probably pushing 1,800 yards last year, 1,900 yards last year. Is a true freshman. So,
Well, Ralph, I like it. Ole Miss, a trendy pick. You're going with them 2 years in a row, and all the power to you. But I'm going to roll with the Wildcats over there at Kroger Field because look, Kentucky underachieved last year. Like, I don't think there's any ifs, ands, buts about it. They had Will Levis, a disappointing year for them offensively and what they wanted to do. But this is kind of where I sit. You get two pieces that I think SEC fans are just kind of taken for granted because, one, we just don't talk about Kentucky a lot. Like, they're that team that kind of sits in that 6 to 8 win range. Occasionally, they'll get that 9-10 win season. I think they got one a couple years ago where they were a game and a half out of the SEC East or something like that. But when you kind of see this team and what they brought in, it's kind of just underrated. Now, obviously, offensive coordinator Liam Cohen comes back from the NFL. Look, he's the one who really helped Will Levis be put on the map in that offense in Kentucky. And really, I mean, we can talk about the size and the intangibles that maybe Levis has. And I don't know if y'all have seen, like, he's obviously struggled big time in camp with the Titans. Like, it's not been good. But the scheme-wise really worked for Kentucky. Well, they bring in a guy, and Ralph, I know you were really high on this guy. I listed this guy. I said this last summer, and it's Devin Leary. If he was on a better team, the numbers he put up in the first 2 seasons in NC State, they are Heisman-level numbers. Like, what he was able to do. This is a guy that threw for 6,800 yards in 30 career games. If he stays healthy, and that was the biggest thing with NC State, obviously, this past year was, I think it was a torn pectoral that he had to he was out with towards the end of the season. If Leary stays upright in this Kentucky offense, they bring in a guy like Ray Davis from Vanderbilt that was a really good player. You have a wide receiving core that has 2 freshman All-Americans in it, arguably one of the better ones, maybe a top half wide receiving core in the SEC. Once again, not a lot of people are kind of talking about that. Look, Kentucky always seemingly has a solid offensive line. I wouldn't say that you have a day one guy there, but man, you've got good football players that understand what they have to do. But when you take a look at the schedule and you talk about kind of all those factors, and I wanted to add in, they seemingly always have like a good to decent defense. And we see this too in the NFL draft. Like, they've got a couple guys each year that are going the first 3 or 4 rounds, it feels like. Like, they've kind of got those playmakers that can do different things. But, they open up against Ball State. I think that's a win right there. Eastern Kentucky, Akron. Your first 3 weeks, I think, offer you the opportunity, Will, a lot like Auburn does, to really kind of get your foot set with a new quarterback, with kind of this new offense. Not really new for Kentucky as it is for Auburn. Your first SEC game's at Vanderbilt. You travel to Nashville. I think that's a good kind of another warm-up, tune-up game for this team that you could be rolling in to September 30th against Florida. You get to be at home for this game. I am not high on Florida. Like, I know they just released the blackout unis. Something of inside, guys, about Graham Mertz being the starting quarterback of Florida just makes me uncomfortable. You don't have the dynamic playmaker.
Nothing about Florida has excited me this year,
No.
other than Napier making really good inroads in recruiting. But he's at Florida, so you expect that. So
exactly, all the eggs in that basket are in that 24 class. Like,
absolutely,
and so that's kind of where they're looking. I think they win that game. And look, this sets up a matchup in Athens. I don't think they win this game, but we talked a lot about, and if you remember when Missouri played Georgia last year in Missouri, everyone goes to that game and the Ohio State game as the 2 games Georgia almost lost. Well, you go back to the game when they played Kentucky last year. They really didn't dominate Kentucky by any means. Kentucky's own inability to move the ball offensively and capitalize hurt them when they had chances. So I don't think that they go into Athens and get blown out.
Think about the storylines for this game. Kentucky rolling in 5-0. 5-0, Kentucky rolling into Georgia. That's a huge game, middle of the season.
It always feels like, too, when Georgia plays Kentucky, Kentucky's always in the top 15 because they seemingly over the past couple of years have had that. So let's chalk that one down as a loss. They're still 5-1. They play Missouri. Missouri is another wild card team for me. I don't really know, and truthfully, it's just because I haven't paid a lot of attention to it. Their quarterback situation, they've got a lot of different options, but they have, what's his name? Brady. Is he still there? Brady Cook still there? I think so, maybe. I know they got the kid Jake Garcia from Miami transferred up there.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah. So they've got like some weird options.
And they got
I think they win that game at home, though.
They got a 4-star from Georgia, not God, they played
what's his name?
Grayson. He was Grayson's quarterback, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Played-
They've got
baseball
good
too.
players. They've got really good players. I think Kentucky wins this game. Then kind of the swing game. This is for me the swing game. When you look at this schedule, so you're 6-1, folks. We're talking about an over/under of 7 wins. You go into your bye week needing 2 more wins to hit this, and you still have Mississippi State, Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, Louisville on your schedule. I think they beat Louisville. So that's 7. If you're telling me you got to find 1 win between Tennessee, Mississippi State, Alabama, South Carolina, I'm telling you can probably find potentially, I'll tell you, maybe definitely 2, maybe 3. Like, this is a team that could get to that 9-win echelon, in my opinion. I don't think they beat Alabama, although they get them at home. But that Tennessee game, you're talking about if you can win the Tennessee game, you're getting to a point where you're no longer in the conversation for the Music City Bowl, the Belk Bowl, or the Duke's Mayo Bowl that it's called now. This is more of like, could you make the Peach Bowl? You know, one of those bowls that's not in the rotation as a 9 to 10 win team, and really number 2 in the SEC East. So, I mean, I think that Kentucky, when we were at SEC Media Days, I've had Kentucky number 2 in my ballot. Like, I think that they have a chance if they can unlock. Like I said, they keep Devin Leary healthy. It has the chance to be something special. They didn't play well last year. They didn't handle the success that they had. You know, I think it was a 10-win season in 2021. They didn't handle that well. But, man, you got a kid at quarterback that he could blow up this year. And, I mean, blow up outside the sphere of the ACC because he was really good at North Carolina State. But, obviously, a lot of people don't know about him. He could do it against SEC defenses. But, hey, those are 3 teams that we think that could kind of make some noise. But here's the community pick, guys, and we're going to just kind of roll into this here. The community pick is the Vanderbilt Commodores, who, Will, you've said this, Ralph, you've said this. This might be the best bet all year, and we don't have a schedule graphic, so you guys talk about it. I'm going to pull up the schedule. I'm going to pull up the schedule real quick, but you guys, I mean, Clark Lee is a good coach.
Well,
like, he's a solid
coach. We know who they
Absolutely.
open up with, okay? We know who they open up with.
Hawaii,
Hawaii.
week 1.
Hawaii.
At home. Week 0.
Week 0, baby.
Week 0.
Right there. Easy win. Easy win.
Vanderbilt, I think they're going to start 3-0.
Yeah.
I mean, they play
Please
Hawaii, and is it 2
Alabama.
FCS opponents?
No. So
Well, I got
think
you right
it's
here.
2-1. It's 2-1 because they're losing Wake Forest.
So they go, it's
No,
Hawaii,
I don't think so.
Alabama,
I think they beat
A&M,
Wake Forest.
at Wake Forest, at UNLV.
I think that's a win.
That's the first 4 games. So you think they start 4-0? That's could
I think
by September
it's either-
23rd, Will, could they hit the over?
They could. Wake Forest was decimated by the portal. They lose Sam Hartman, which, you know, and I don't know a lot about Wake Forest, but I know how good Sam Hartman was for them. That's a huge loss. And playing Vandy, who I think is a team on the rise. Even Vandy, we've talked about them. They've been decimated in the portal as well. But Clark Lee,
AJ Swan's a good quarterback too. AJ Swan is a good quarterback.
AJ Swan is good. AJ Swan is very good. But I think Vandy's on the rise. And 3.5, they could start 3-0 or 3-1 those first 4 games, and then they just got to find one more win.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Go ahead, Ralph.
I was just gonna say, I think I told you personally, Bryce. I said I can just see Vanderbilt starting 3-1 with that loss to Wake Forest, and just and being in a game and later in the season, having like an Ole Miss who maybe look over, and in Florida, they can beat Florida this year.
They did last year.
They
did
own
last
Florida.
year.
Florida,
Vandy owns Florida.
and in South Carolina, they may just overlook them. They might just go, it's just Vanderbilt, and just overlook them, and may just get knocked off their feet. I don't think Tennessee's going to lose to them. I mean, Tennessee blew them out last year, but one of those teams. And I hate to say it for you, Will. I really do believe it, but Auburn's got to be careful too, because that's just one of those games.
Will, say the stat.
Auburn.
Say the stat.
Auburn has not won in Nashville. Oh, wait. It's at least a decade. I want to say 15 years. I think the last time Auburn won was 2007, 2008 was the last time Auburn won in Nashville. Granted, this will be only the second time, I think, since then Auburn's been there this year. And the last one was, 2011. Game day was there because it was a week, just an awful week of games. And Vanderbilt won.
Jeez.
So, I mean, it's just Vanderbilt. They're going to start 3-1. possibly 4-0, depending on how the Wake Forest game goes. And you're going to find an SEC or 2 wins. I mean, you're talking about
they're gonna steal a win or 2 in the SEC.
I could possibly see this easily going 5 or 6 wins. You know, if you're not hammering the over, something's wrong with you. I'm sorry. I'm just saying.
I have little to no, experience in this, and I would take the over. That's how I feel about it. I mean, 3.5 wins. I'm going to hammer it. That's what I'll say. We need to get a crowded booth hammer so we can literally just say hammer it. But I'll say this:
put your mortgage on it. Put your mortgage on Vandy over 3.5 wins.
Okay,
responsibly.
Whoa,
responsibly. Put your
clip it. No, I mean, look,
it's fine. We'll send you this address.
When you talk about 4-0 with them, you're rolling into September 23rd, y'all. The first month of the season, needing 2 more wins to get to a bowl game. The most likely people that I think they could lose to or beat. I'm sorry. Missouri, Florida.
Agree.
And I'm a toss-up, honestly, between Kentucky and South Carolina. Because Kentucky, I just got done saying this. Anything can happen. Kentucky could be a dumpster fire. Devin Leary could get hurt, and you don't really have an idea of what you want to do. South Carolina, you mentioned it, Ralph. You go on the road there. That's a tough environment. But, man, could they be looking ahead? That's on the 11th, 2 weeks before Clemson rolling into town. I need to see who does South Carolina play before that? They play Kentucky, or I'm sorry, Jacksonville State. So
Clemson.
South Carolina could also take a step back. I think they really overachieved last year. They may very well have gotten the best year out of Spencer Rattler that they could have.
Yeah, that's also very true.
I think, but like I said, Vanderbilt's gonna start easily 3-1. And you're only 1 win away from hitting that over, like you said earlier about Kentucky. You're possibly 6-1 with 2 to 3 possible easy wins, or 2 to 3 possible very easy wins to get. With the rest of the season, it's possible. You're talking about Vanderbilt's going to be there, just and they're going to have a construction site in the other end zone. So
yeah, as long as none of the players get hit by the falling debris, they'll be fine. That's kind of my take on it.
Don't tractor, don't trip on some worker over there, with jackhammer. Just be careful out there in Nashville, okay?
All right, here's another one. How many over/under false start calls are going to happen on that Saturday with the construction going on? I don't imagine the construction is going to be going on at the same time, but I'd like to think it is. I'd like to think that they're just going to be building things going on around there.
I would love to see just one rabid fan just be dressed up as a construction worker and run on the field and just tackle somebody. It's Nashville. Something's going to happen. Let's be honest here. You have a wide opening. When I was at Troy, they were doing construction during my freshman year there, adding that north end zone, and they just had a big cinder block wall back there and behind the state. So it was like the south end zone was really nice and had a nice look. North end zone, just big cinder block wall. Just okay.
I don't know. They got to figure that out. You can't have construction going on during the season, but it is what it is.
Auburn doesn't have to worry about that. They refuse to do any construction on Jordan-Hare Stadium.
They have a little sitting area now. Don't you know that?
Oh God, the club seats, whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, we appreciate you so much for tuning in. This is the Crowded Booth Podcast, talking about the SEC teams that are most likely to surprise and maybe hit on their over/under. Hey, I think we had some pretty good arguments for that. A little programming note for you going forward. Every single Wednesday night, we're going to be live talking about the week that is to come for college football, previewing some of the biggest games, talking about some of the biggest storylines. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and set up notifications so you know when we go live. That is in addition to our Georgia Tech shows as well that we'll be doing and other content as well. But hey, it's going to be a lot of fun. Head over to thecrowdedbooth.com. Make sure you sign up there. Great newsletter happening. Will's going to have kind of a walkthrough of each of the games where he's going to go through what Auburn's schedule looks like. We also got some recruiting stuff as well. That's a lot of fun too. So, hey, we'll catch you next time. If you're listening audio or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, make sure to follow there as well and on YouTube too. We'll catch you next time here on another episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.